这里要为大家插播一条刚刚我们才看到的消息有关于基辛格访华，来自南华早报一篇独家报道，其中介绍了一个非常重要的细节，就是这一次基辛格的访华见习近平，实际上并不是最近才安排的，已经至少安排了好几个月，至少是在2个多月前就已经定下来了。那么这个细节是之前我们所没有了解到的。而同时这篇文章也特别提及在现在的这个钓鱼台国宾馆5号厅的这样的一个装潢中背后的这一幅画非常值得关注。背后是什么呢？雪中寒梅。言外之意就是现在中美关系虽然是冰天雪地，但是呢梅花香自苦寒来，仍然是表达了某一种希望的姿态这一点呢，我们也为大家进行相关的介绍。稍后大家应该可以在其他的一系列简报中看到来自南华早报的更详细的报道。今天节目结束之后仍然有思想先驱报环节。在思想先驱报中我们继续为大家聊中国经济相关的话题。我们特别要为大家推荐的呢，是一位资深的中国政治以及科技的这样的一位研究人士叫做 Dan Wang。 那么呢，他近期写了一份中国笔记，详细的记录他在过去的几年间，特别是过去的几个月间所关注到的中国经济和科技产业运行的更多的情况。他就观察到了一点，就是说现在在整个中国的经济层面上实际上呢，基本的元气仍然是在的。说中国经济好时代一去不复返了，可能有一点夸张其词。中国的科技投资产业仍然是蠢蠢欲动，特别是现在 AI 包括量子计算包括芯片所带动的大热点，仍然是挑动了很多中国有志之士的神经和雄心。但是有一点，就是现在大家普遍对于中国的政治有这样的一种心灰意冷的失望感，对于中国未来的前进方向有这样一种犹疑感。他就讲到说他与身边的人聊，发现呢，中国身边的这一些金领精英们往往把自己的子女孩子送到海外。但是有一点很不一样，过去他们把自己的孩子送到海外，很多时候呢是镀金拿到一个学费就可以回来了，继续掌管爸爸妈妈的企业。现在他们却跟自己在海外读书的这一些子女说，就千万别回来了，表达了他们对于未来中国政治运行的某一种不确定性。而在谈及这一点的时候健忘也特别说，这一些中国的2代子女往往呢是中国的最新贵有钱人的象征。这个集体对于中国的未来产生了这样不明确的心态，非常值得我们关注。今天的思想先驱报中，我们会详细为您介绍有关情况的更多内容。在刚刚过去的一天有另外一位中国外交官的表现引起了我们的关注，就是接替秦刚担任驻美大使的谢锋。他在阿斯彭安全论坛上接受 Semaphore 一位记者的采访，那么其中呢被问及了对于中美关系的很多详细内容。当然大家最关注到的还是他对于秦刚的下落到底是不是有所了解。谢锋在这一次采访中是如何表态他对于秦刚下落知情或者是不知情呢？在提及美国的时候，谢锋又体现了怎样的语言风格呢？在今天节目之后的华尔街联报节目中，我们会为您带来这一段现场视频，大家可以看一看谢锋本人的言语方式和他的前任秦刚有什么样的不同。特别是在谈及秦刚时他用了一些比较让我们觉得神秘或者是意外的表达方式，不知道您从其中又能够看出什么样的蛛丝马迹呢？如果您有更多的想法，也欢迎您在直播留言区告诉我们。感谢给我们打赏的朋友，感谢麦团，感谢甜点，感谢艺人，感谢如是我闻，谢谢这些观众朋友们对于我们的支持。稍后思想先驱报与您再会。
智库简报，全球思想者的专业媒体，来自各大智库、顶级媒体评论简报，由六度团队整理而成。中美关系的越南在哪里？战略与国际研究中心。2023年7月是越南合作与斗争的重大战略调整、大战略中的转变的20年，预计这将使该国在中美之间处于同等距离。像其他东南亚首都一样，河内不想选边站。即使在实施2003年调整20年后，越南仍然更接近中美关系的中国方面。1996年，越南共产党第8次全国代表大会上，越南领导人首次宣布了独立自主、自力更生、开放、多边化、对外关系多样化的外交政策。作者译文。 这5项有时相互冲突的原则构成了越南的宏伟战略，尽管该国从未明确声称或承认其存在。随着苏联解体和东欧社会主义集团，中国和越南是世界上仅存的5个共产主义政权之一，与古巴、辽国和朝鲜并列。越南和中国领导人认为，两国政权的生存符合其国家安全利益。越南认为中国是保护社会主义的事实盟友，同时将美国视为领导帝国主义势力的头号敌人，意图推翻全世界的共产主义政权。然而，越南领导人越来越难以将这一观点与1990年代后期不断变化的战略环境相协调。2003年7月，越南共产党下发关于新形势下保卫祖国战略的决议，提出了合作伙伴和奋斗物件的理念。通过这种新方法，越南领导人不再将任何国家仅仅视为伙伴或对手，而是两者的结合，威胁感知的变化。通过大战略调整，河内与北京在具体的政治、经济和安全问题上进行合作。与此同时，越南在南中国海和湄公河流域与中国做斗争，同时旨在减少其对中国经济的贸易依赖。值得注意的是，越南优先考虑其海军和空军的现代化，以及深化与印度、日本和美国等志同道合的伙伴的防务合作，以更好地保护其在南中国海的利益。2003年合作与斗争的重大战略调整为越南加强与美国的关系铺平了道路，尽管它们存在分歧。这种调整也使越南能够进一步融入西方主导的全球经济，扩大市场，并受益于经济发达国家的资本资源、技术和先进管理方法，促进经济发展。河内在各种问题上与华盛顿存在分歧，包括美国对越南人权做法的担忧，越南领导人对美国政权更迭意图的怀疑，越南在美国法律下的非市场经济地位，美国贸易逆差的政治化，以及美国对越南货币操纵的指控。最后2次发生在特朗普政府期间。尽管大的战略调整导致越南在2个大国之间追求更加平衡的方法，但这个东南亚国家仍然更接近中国而不是美国。越南同意在2008年与中国建立全面战略伙伴关系，这是河内外交武器库中最高级别的合作。然而，越南又花了5年时间才在2013年与美国签署了全面伙伴关系，最低水准。近年来，美国一直敦促越南将伙伴关系提升到战略层面，但越南领导人并未做出积极回应。河内可能会同意在今年晚些时候提升与华盛顿的伙伴关系，以庆祝他们全面伙伴关系10周年，但它仍将比河内与北京的伙伴关系低一个级别。虽然标题并不总是反映伙伴关系的真实内容，但作为政治声明，他们至少表明越南在外交上更接近中国。此外，2022年美国与越南贸易额为1233亿美元，仍低于中国与越南贸易额的1773亿美元。有几个因素可以解释为什么越南在正式将与美国的关系升级为战略伙伴关系方面进展缓慢。首先，中国在地理上接近，与中国有1306公里的长边界，中国在物理上比越南大得多，经济上更强大，军事上更强大，这使得中国在越南领导人心目中显得尤为重要。在中美战略竞争加剧的情况下，河内对向华盛顿靠拢感到不舒服。其次，与美国的战略伙伴关系将导致对人权的更高期望，河内可能会发现人权威胁到其政权的生存。最后，在进行升级方面存在后勤和协定方面的困难。两国已经讨论了两国最高领导人的正式访问，但尚未取得成果。一些观察家推测，美越南战略伙伴关系将由美国总统和越南共产党总书记签署。两国之间的全面伙伴关系是由两国总统签署的。如果武文顺总统和乔拜登总统进行升级会更合适。尽管如此，阮富仲总书记在越南政治体系中的主导地位使协定复杂化。展望未来，越南基于4不防务原则的不结盟战略规范给美国加强与越南的安全关系，以对抗中国在南海和更广泛的印太地区的胁迫带来了挑战。越南不结军事联盟的第一个步，使该国无法与美国建立联盟。虽然新加坡也是东南亚国家联盟的成员，已经授予美国进入基地和飞越特权，但由于其领土上没有外国基地的第二个步，越南不会效仿。尽管苏联和俄罗斯从1978年到2002年使用了越南在金兰湾的海军基地，但越南不太可能允许美国进入其军事基地。此外，越南政府对俄罗斯入侵乌克兰的立场与北京的做法相似，为其与西方的关系带来了新的障碍。 尽管如此，美国还有其他方式来加强与越南的安全合作。华盛顿可以说服河内根据越南每年每个国家一次港口停靠的政策，使美国海军的访问正规化。通过专注于提高越南的自卫能力，并在多边组织的框架内与河内接触，华盛顿可以在不违反河内不结盟原则的情况下对抗北京。认识到越南与俄罗斯的密切关系及其应对乌克兰危机的方法，美国应该就共同关心的领域进行越南接触，同时以建设性和尊重的方式解决分歧。通过采取细致入微和多方面的方法，美国可以找到加强与越南安全关系的途径。Beach Tran 是华盛顿特区战略与国际研究中心东南亚专案的兼职研究员，非常驻。谢谢收看智库简报，这是由六度简报团队为您制作的内容。六度简报的网址是6dobrief.com， 专门面对全球精英、专业人士。
华尔街现场谢锋阿斯彭论坛首秀 ，Semaphore 的史蒂夫·克莱蒙斯 （Steve Clemens） 在阿斯彭安全论坛上采访了新任命的中国驻美大使谢锋，讨论了一系列外交热点话题。谢锋在谈话中说，北京最大的不满之一是美国的虚伪，他一方面促进两个超级大国之间的竞争，另一方面却不让中国做生意，比如禁止华为在美国开展业务，或限制向中国出口芯片元件。这就好比在泳装比赛上限制对方穿老旧的泳装，而你自己却穿着 Speedo， 谢锋打趣道。当被问及从公众视线中消失了20多天的外交部长秦刚在突然访华期间是否会见了美国前国务卿亨利·基辛格时，这位大使给出了一个隐晦的答案。谢锋说：“让我们拭目以待。”当被问及秦刚缺席一事时，他说外交部已就此事向媒体做了通报。谢锋重申，中国希望在华盛顿和北京之间外交争执持续不断的情况下改善美中关系，并表示可以立即开始小规模的改善，例如增加两国之间的客运航班和外交渠道。但他警告说，美国也需要在台湾等不容谈判的问题上让步。谢锋说，我认为最根本的事情是回到一个中国的原则上来。他断言，他担心一些台湾领导人的亲分离主义言论对美国外交政策的影响有多大。
I'm Steve Clemens of Semaphore. Ambassador, it's great to see you. Let me just start out a little differently here. I'm just interested, so I want to pay respect to anyone near or over 100 years old. Anyone? Anyone? Well, we had oh, you're joking. This is a serious matter because there's some breaking news. Because Henry Kissinger was reported to have gone to China. It's a long trip, and the 100-year-old diplomat Henry Kissinger is in China. Breaking news. Would love to hear, how did his trip go? Has he solved things that America... I mean, is there any breaking news that you can share with us about solving any of the problems that China and the United States have?
Well, I think it's a good occasion to pay our respect to Dr. Kissinger again. This year, he is 100 years old, and he has not only been I think first of all, he is a patriotic American citizen. He cares for American interests, but I think it's also wise for him to realize that a sound and stable Sino-US relations is in the interest not only of China, but also the United States. So that is why the first American friend I paid my courtesy to is Dr. Kissinger. Oh. I visited his home in Hartford, and afterwards I also hosted a dinner in honor of his centenary birthday. So now he is in Beijing, and he will be meeting with the Chinese leaders. And I think the message from this visit is that a Sino-US relations is so important that we simply cannot let it fail. And that is the responsibility of our two countries to work together to bring this relationship back to the right track.
Well, we know he met Wang Yi. We know he met the defense minister, who we have not had a lot of meetings with the defense. Any chance he met Qin Gang, the foreign minister?
Well, let's wait and see.
Any more? No.
Yes, there will be more. I think there will be other Chinese leaders who will be meeting with Dr. Kissinger.
Well, we will do this. We are interested in the former foreign, I shouldn't say former, the current foreign minister, the previous ambassador. He spoke on this stage last year. Ed Luce interviewed him, and just would love to hear how he is. And so I thought maybe he was doing secret diplomacy, and Henry Kissinger was over engaged with Qin Gang, but that hasn't come out yet. So if that has happened, I hope you'll give me the scoop.
Well, the foreign ministry spokesman have already, briefed the media on this. So I thank you for your care.
Okay, great. So let me ask you, Ambassador, you're here, and I'm interested in why, given, the U.S.-China relations, as you know, is in a bit of trouble. It's a portfolio that's going to require a lot of work. I'm not sure why you wanted to come here. What is your agenda as you see it? As you diagnosed U.S.-China relations, what's good, what's not good from your perspective, and what are you going to try and fix?
Well, this is, frankly speaking, a difficult time for China-U.S. relations. But as a diplomat, I have to, follow the instruction of my leaders, as well as my government, to do the job that is needed to be done. So I came here. On the one hand, as the Chinese representative, I'm here to safeguard China's interests. But on the other hand, as the representative of the Chinese people, I'm coming here also to enhance communication and cooperation between China and the United States. And this is also my important mission. China-U.S. relations is facing serious difficulties and challenges. Recently, since my arrival, I have noticed there have been reflections on the U.S. side on its China policy. In the previous weeks, there have been a series of high-level exchanges between China and the United States. And they proved to be in-depth, candid, and constructive. I think the most important thing out of these visits is that both sides agreed we should implement the important common understanding reached between the two presidents in Bali. I think that this is a good sign. This provides a rare opportunity, but the challenges are still abound and the foundations are still fragile. So we need to keep up and also to sustain this good momentum.
So you had Secretary of State Blinken, who will be here this week. You had Secretary of Treasury Yellen, who will not. We've had John Kerry over. Now we can't count him as an official, but of course Henry Kissinger. So there's a stream of people going over. Who's next?
Well, right now, Kerry, the presidential special envoy, is in Beijing. And Secretary Raimondo has also expressed a wish to go to China. So we welcome more American officials, as well as people from the business, from the students, scholars,
right.
Even tourists. We welcome. We embrace you to visit China.
So do you look at Secretary Raimondo? We were just talking to her earlier, or not talking to her, but about her earlier. In a session about chips with the CEO of Intel and the previous Secretary of Commerce, Penny Pritzker. And we were talking about a kind of technology war with China and whether we're in that or not. Both of them said no, but they said the challenge is very severe. Do you look at Gina Raimondo as an economic official, or do you look at her as a national security military official?
Well, that question has to be determined by the U.S. side, not by me, But frankly speaking, China is opposed to any kind of trade war, technological war under the pretext of competition. China do not shy away from competition, but the definition of competition by the U.S. side, I think is not fair. But first of all, United States is trying to win by keeping China out. For instance, Huawei was banned, even though this company has come up with a agreement to have no security, to have no backdoor. So how can you imagine a competition without one side even on the ground? And secondly, I think the United States is rallying allies to encircle China. This is not in conformity with the one-on-one game rule.
So you feel encircled?
Of course, this is the fact. This is the fact. And thirdly, I think United States is restricting or prohibiting China importing equipments to build chips, which are smaller than 14 nanometers. I think this is like restricting the other side to wear outdated swimwear in a swimming contest, while you yourself is wearing a Speedo, fast skin. So this is not fair.
I am, just for the record, very comfortable with outdated swimwear in this, but it is interesting metaphor. But I mean, China, however, in response to some of these, you've banned Micron technologies from your national security architecture. You've also restricted export of 2 metals. Are we at the beginning of an escalatory tit for tat from your perspective, that you're now sending a signal that you're not going to take it anymore, and you're going to go and begin restricting technologies and materials that the United States needs?
Well, you see, up to now, 1,300 more Chinese entities or personnel have been on the US sanction list. And these people were forced out of job, and their families suffered greatly. And we have been, it has been reported that the US side is also considering, having a outbound investment review mechanism, as well as further, prohibition on the export of AI chips to China. So these, the Chinese people cannot remain silent, and Chinese government cannot simply sit idly by. In Chinese saying, there's a Chinese saying that we will not, make provocations, but we will not flinch from provocations. So China definitely, will make our response, but definitely it's not our hope to have a tit for tat. We don't want, trade war, technological war. We want to say goodbye to the Iron Curtain as well as the Silicon Curtain.
Do you think Americans you're meeting with are getting that message? You were at the Pentagon recently. I don't know if you've have met Representative Mike Gallagher, of the chair of the Select Committee on China, but are you sensing that message that you're sharing with us, do they believe you?
Well, I have not met with the representative yet, but I'm trying my best to engage with the American public. And the reason why I come here to attend this forum,
I think they're
simply to speak out.
I think they're watching, by the way. I think the committee is definitely watching. So
thank you.
You want to say hello to Mike Gallagher?
I would like to express my thanks again to the forum for inviting me.
Right.
And thank you for talking to me.
But in this portfolio of your job and whatever, I reached out. I basically talked to a couple of folks I really respect in the broad foreign policy establishment, but I also got a couple of quotes. I just want to read them real quickly, because I think you have a bitch of a job coming up. and so one of these very senior U.S. officials, I don't want to name, but in the Biden White House, they basically believe, listen, Steve, don't have any illusions. China has a long-term plan to displace America as the global hegemonic power and replace that displacement with its own role and influence. That's one. If you listen to Mike Gallagher, he says the greatest threat to the United States is the Chinese Communist Party. The CCP continues to commit genocide, obscure the origins of the coronavirus pandemic, steal hundreds of billions of dollars worth of American intellectual property, and threaten Taiwan, etc. Kevin McCarthy said to win the new Cold War, he calls it a new Cold War, we must respond to Chinese aggression with tough policies to strengthen our economy, rebuild our supply chains, speak out for human rights, stand against military aggression, and end the theft of America's personal information. These are very tough words. And then a different official said, Xi Feng is the right person at the right time to be China's ambassador in Washington. I think he will be able to communicate in hopefully an effective manner, both in the nation's capital and more broadly, while of course representing President Xi in China. We certainly need that, as you so well understand. And I'll just say that is a very, very important too. There is not a consensus per se around. There's a lot of toxicity. So you're going to have to be dealing with this. So when you hear those kinds of comments from senior government officials, what is your path for success?
Well, to follow the question you raised just now, whether my voice has been heard by the general public. You see, since my arrival, I have a perception that a little bit surprising to me of this so-called political correctness in the US society. I have been talking to as many American friends as possible. I think there are still a large number of supporters for this relationship, but they seem to be under pressure, and they seem to be reticent under the recent, chilling effect, and they tend to restrain from making their views, out. Under the so-called anti-China chorus. An American netizen commented on my Twitter saying that I hope you find some allies. There are some hiding in the darkness, afraid of being crushed. So one of my job here, I think, is to seek them out. I am one, but we are many. So I hope that all of you will join hands with me to seek them out and to contribute together to this relationship. Now, coming back to your previous question, Chinese people, I think, are the most friendly people in the world. And aggressiveness or assertiveness is not our tradition. And invasion or the pursuit of hegemony definitely is not our DNA. When President Xi Jinping met with Secretary Blinken about 2 weeks ago, our president said emphatically that China and the world is big enough to let China and the United States develop respectively and also to prosper together. China do not challenge the United States or try to displace the United States. Instead of outcompeting others, China is now focusing on outdoing ourselves. We have a long way to go, and we want to build the prosperity pie even bigger and also divide them fairly.
Right.
So it's an uphill, battle for us. So there's no one is more eager than China to see a stable, healthy relationship between China and the United States.
So how do you get there? So Wang Yi is in the news a lot because he's doing two jobs. You're the head of the CCP's Foreign Committee and then Foreign Affairs Committee, and also really acting in the role of Foreign Minister for the moment. And he said that no one can transform China. And he says, more importantly, absolutely no one can contain China, that both of those would be there. But I think a lot of the concern about so-called transforming China is the difference between China and the US on dealing with human rights. Or how Brad Smith of Microsoft is here, wrote a book on tools and weapons about how China deploys facial recognition software and how. I'm interested in how and whether on these big issues that a lot of people in the world care about, AI, the coming use of quantum technology, but also human rights, how we can solve those tensions in a way that's not considered transforming, even though the United States wants to see transformation.
Well, China has been engaging with the United States and other countries, in dialogues on AI, on human rights, on a very broad range of issues. But of course, China and the United States are two different nations with very different cultural background and historical background. So we cannot see eye to eye, on everything, just like each individual cannot see, eye to eye on every issue. But our position is that we should seek common grounds while sharing differences. And mutual respect is very important. So China is, take the example of human rights. China now is promoting the so-called whole process, people's democracy. That is, you see, rose is beautiful not because of the name, because of the smell, And the democracy should not be as a slogan. It should deliver. We think that if a democracy process that have the widest participation, it can deliver outcomes, that is to improve people's lives. And if finally it can get the approval of the people, then this is good democracy. From the previous dozens of years, Edelman and Harvard University conducted, opinion poll in China, and the approval rate for the Chinese government has always been over 90%. So I think this is very convincing.
You just made Richard Edelman's day. Let me read something here. It's in today's Financial Times by Edward Luce, who's in the hall. And he wrote, the challenge for the West is in forging a common front on China without it spilling over into direct confrontation. Unlike the war in Ukraine, which must eventually reach some kind of messy conclusion, the rivalry between the US and China is a project without end. For the purposes of strategic planners, it offers no natural conclusion. This is where history ceases to offer much guidance. Short of Armageddon, there's no scenario in which either the US or China will emerge as the world's sole hegemon. It's a really thoughtful paragraph in Ed's piece, but it made me think about something you and I have talked about before. And Anya Manuel, the director of the Aspen Security Forum, mentioned yesterday, is there any room for a cooperation agenda? Is there any area that you can encircle where the circles come over and you can more robustly grab a cooperation agenda, and what would be in it?
Well, for China-US relations looking forward, I think three priorities are essential. One is to shorten the negative list.
Shorten the what?
Shorten the negative list, to clear the obstacles and manage the differences. For example, the Taiwan question, which is so important, so sensitive, we should, taken care of it in accordance with the three joint communiques.
When do you think
United
you're
States
going
should
to
take the China's entities and the personnel, out of the sanction list?
Right.
And the President Biden have been saying that United States do not seek Taiwan independence. It does not want to decouple with China. It does not want to stall China's economic development, and it does not seek to change China's system. We hope that the United States
do you
will
believe
implement.
do you believe the president?
They will translate these statements into concrete actions. So this is number one. The second category, I think we also have to expand the positive agenda. I think there are a lot of areas, that we can cooperate, including, the AI, quantum, whatever, But I know now is a difficult time, so why don't we start with some concrete, small steps? For example, to increase passenger flights, to adjust the China travel advisory, to renew the cooperation agreement on science and technology, to restart the MECA program, which will facilitate more congressmen and senators, as well as their staff members, to visit China. Why don't we hold the tourism, leadership forum, so as to attract tourists, from both countries to visit each other? And the last but not least, I think we should do something to facilitate the visa application as well as the border entry for businessmen, for scholars, for students, and for tourists. So these are easy things I think we can do right away. As I remember in the before 2017, China and the United States used to have more than 100, almost 200 dialogue mechanisms, but they have been stalled by the US side since 2018. I think the two sides have waited too long. Why don't we start renewing them? If not all, then starting from 50 or 30. I think that is possible. And the last one is the one I said just now, to seek out supporters to create an environment for a healthy development of our bilateral relations.
On the climate front, what do you think John Kerry will achieve in China? And do you have any criticisms for the United States' role on climate today?
Climate change is another area. China and the United States have great potential to work together. If you look back, the Paris Agreement.
Do you think that China is doing so much? I mean, I'm actually pretty well read in it due to China's growth on a lot of fronts, carbon, there's no doubt in those areas, but also in dealing with climate remediation or carbon remediation in a lot of areas. Do you think the United States is living up to its goals on climate change today?
Well, first of all, great potential for China and the United States to work together in this area. Secondly, I think we should still, stick to the principle of common, responsibility, common but differentiated responsibility. And thirdly, you should implement what you have, committed up to now. For example, the developed countries have committed themselves to providing assistance to developed countries. So we are waiting that to be done with real actions. Coming back to the question you just raised now, China definitely do not seek hegemony, and we don't want to have conflict with the United States. As I said, we do not want to challenge the United States or displace the United States. We want to grow together with the United States. So I think the Thucydides, trap is not inevitable. It's not inevitable, and that is why I think we should say goodbye, because the world has changed. Now we have to look beyond. We should say goodbye to the Cold War mentality. We should say goodbye to the bloc confrontation. We should say goodbye to the zero-sum game. And we should avoid a major country conflict. I once remembered, an American friend asked me, what kind of flower will grow out of China? And my answer is, it will be a flower of peace, a flower of cooperation, a flower of common, development.
Right.
It will be a Chinese peony.
Right.
Chinese peony. As beautiful, as sweet as American roses.
I think that's a tweetable moment. We only have 3 minutes. I want to do lightning round with you. In talking about what China wants to become and how it's evolving, one of the features that we've all been surprised, we woke up one day and saw that China had negotiated normalization between the Saudis and Iranians. What's next? The fact that you're doing it, if you can give me a short answer here, but it's a different behavior. We didn't see China doing that kind of role. Should we expect more? Is Israel-Palestine next?
Well, China, the purpose of China facilitating for the re-establishment of diplomatic relations between the two countries is simply to encourage more countries in the region to embrace peace, to shake hands. So I'm very glad to see that Palestine is following. We hope that China will not only do this in the Middle East, but also in other areas. We think that as China develop into a economically more vibrant, country, then China should contribute more to world peace and development.
You have a relationship without end with Russia. God, I can't believe we have 2.5 minutes. What are Vladimir Putin's redeeming qualities as you see them?
Well, as diplomats, we conduct our foreign relations, on our respective national interests. I have not met with President Putin personally. I still remember President,
So
Bush.
you might
I
still
still
not like
remember
him.
when I was working here for the first time.
Right.
President Bush Jr.
Right.
said that he looked into the eyes of Mr. Putin.
Saw his soul.
He saw his soul. He's reliable,
Yeah.
But this doesn't. China, Russia have as two big, neighbors. We have more than 4,000 kilometers of border. So it's only natural for us to maintain good neighborly relations.
China cares about its borders and China cares about sovereignty. Do you believe Ukraine has a legitimate case fighting back against Russia because its sovereign lines as recognized by them? I mean, you had an embassy there. I mean, do you recognize that? And what can China do to help solve this horrible mess?
Well, to finish the previous question, it's only natural for China and Russia to maintain normal, friendly, neighborly relations, and also to engage with each other in legitimate, trade. But China, since the breakout of the Ukrainian crisis, we have been openly and repeatedly our position. We we stand for the safeguarding of national for sovereignty and territorial integrity. This is number one. And secondly, we are also asking for the respect to the legitimate and reasonable security concern.
Lastly, I want to come back to Taiwan. I'm interested in what your red lines are. There's now a discussion of another pass-through situation, but we see a quote out there that appeared in the Financial Times today, in fact, about a potential front runner in Taiwan's race saying their job will be done when they're able to go by invitation into the White House. Is that a red line? Is that the same for you as Taiwan declaring independence? Because I asked this, because yesterday there was a very, very good interview with Admiral John Aquilina with my colleague and journalistic colleague Courtney Kuby about Taiwan, and he said, look, U.S. policy has not changed. The Taiwan Relations Act, the 6 reassurances are there, the 3 communiques, and so there's been no change. But my question to you is, what are the red lines that would make you not believe President Biden and the administration that policy had not changed? Would it be an invitation to the White House?
Well, talking about Taiwan, I think the first and foremost thing that we should bear in mind is that Taiwan is China's Taiwan. It's part of China. It's an alienable part of China. So China, I think no one is more eager or sincere than China to see a peaceful solution, to see the peace and stability along the Taiwan Straits to continue, and also to see a peaceful reunification of China. Now, the 2 imposing threats to them, on the one hand, is the Taiwan separatists advancing their separatist, agenda, seeking U.S. support. They have deviated from their previous position of one China. They even, have given up the cross-strait consensus, Singapore consensus, and they have also, they even did not admit they are Chinese. So this is a very dangerous, path they are taking. Secondly, is the United States, playing the Taiwan card to contain China. So these together will embolden the separatists to take adventurous, moves. So that is something that we should be guarded against. So now I think the most fundamental thing is to return to the one China principle. And the most important thing is that the 3 joint communiques between our 2 countries should be implemented. And thirdly, I think the provocative, adventurous moves by the Taiwan separatists should be contained. And now the priority for us is to stop Lai Ching-te from visiting United States, which is like a gray rhino charging at us. Thank you.
Final. 50 years until last year, we had pandas in the United States. There are no pandas in the United States. Is that going to be your big peony?
I will do my utmost to do that. And hopefully, here in Aspang, there will also be, one.
Ambassador Zhifeng, I would say this genuinely, that there's people knew you were coming here. I have been talked to by people in this room from all over, everyone. Well, first I want to say, first of all, thank you for taking some tough questions. Thank you as well for your candor. And I think there's no one here that wants to see things go badly, but it's going to require both sides to be introspective and thoughtful. I will tell you that the last line of Ed's really excellent article is that it is a zero-sum game. So they have to prove to him that it's somehow wrong, because right now it has that feel. But I want to say thank you so much.
Thank you. Let us work together to reverse the zero-sum game and to make it into a win-win game. Thank you.